Elena didn't waste time. As soon as Jason agreed to hear her out, she led him to a car parked a short distance from the garage. It was unremarkable at first glance, a plain sedan with no signs of anything unusual. But when they got inside, the dashboard lit up with strange symbols that pulsed faintly in blue and green light. Jason stared at them, wide-eyed. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tinged with both awe and suspicion. "Just something to get us where we need to go," Elena replied, her tone calm but firm. She started the engine, and the car moved smoothly onto the road. Jason wanted to ask more questions, but the look on her face told him now wasn't the time. Instead, he focused on the scenery outside the window, though his mind raced with possibilities. They drove for hours, leaving the small town behind and heading deeper into the countryside. The roads grew narrower, the landscape wilder. Eventually, Elena turned off onto what seemed like an abandoned dirt path. Trees loomed tall on either side, their branches twisting together like skeletal fingers. Jason felt a chill creep up his spine, though he couldn't tell if it came from fear or excitement. Finally, they arrived at a clearing surrounded by dense forest. In the center stood a massive metal door embedded in the ground, camouflaged so well it almost blended into the earth. Elena stepped out of the car and motioned for Jason to follow. He did, though every instinct screamed at him to turn back. "This way," she said, pressing her hand against a panel beside the door. It scanned her palm, then slid open with a low hiss, revealing a set of stairs leading downward. Warm yellow lights illuminated the passage, making it feel less intimidating than it should have. Still, Jason hesitated. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You'll see," Elena replied. "Trust me, Jason. If you're serious about understanding those messages, this is where you need to be." Reluctantly, Jason followed her down the stairs. The air grew cooler as they descended, and the sound of their footsteps echoed softly against the walls. At the bottom, they entered a vast underground facility filled with people in lab coats and uniforms. Monitors displayed complex data streams, and strange devices hummed quietly in corners. Jason's jaw dropped. "What is this place?" he managed to ask. "This," Elena said, gesturing around them, "is one of Earth's most secret installations. We've been preparing for contact with extraterrestrial life for decades. You're here because you were chosen, whether you realize it or not." Before Jason could respond, a man approached them. He looked older than Elena, with graying hair and glasses perched on his nose. His expression was kind but serious. "Jason Carter," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Dr. Alan Brooks. Welcome to Project Horizon." Jason shook his hand, still overwhelmed. "Chosen? By who?" "The Caliths," Dr. Brooks explained. "An advanced species far beyond our own. They've been observing humanity for centuries, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Apparently, that moment has arrived, and somehow, you're part of it." Jason frowned. "But I didn't agree to anything. I don't even know what you're talking about." "That message you received," Elena interjected, "wasn't random. It was a summons, a reminder of an agreement made long ago, before you were born. The Caliths believe you're ready to fulfill your role in their plans." "What role?" Jason demanded, frustration creeping into his voice. "Nobody tells me anything." Dr. Brooks sighed, glancing at Elena before turning back to Jason. "The Caliths practice something called the bond. It's a sacred connection between two beings, one human, one Calith. Through the bond, knowledge, emotions, and even parts of consciousness can be shared. It's how they build alliances with other species." "And you think I'm supposed to do this?" Jason asked incredulously. "Why me?" "We don't fully understand their methods," Dr. Brooks admitted. "But they chose you, Jason. Whether it's fate, coincidence, or something else entirely, only time will tell." Jason sank into a nearby chair, trying to process everything. The idea of bonding with an alien sounded insane, Yet part of him couldn't deny the pull he'd felt since hearing that message. Maybe there was truth to what they were saying. Or maybe he was walking straight into madness. "I'll need proof," he said finally, looking up at Elena and Dr. Brooks. "Show me something real. Something undeniable." Elena nodded. "That's fair. Come with me." She led him to a secure room where holographic projections of the caliphs floated in midair. Their forms shimmered, ethereal and beautiful, unlike anything Jason had ever seen. For the first time, doubt gave way to wonder. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than him. And maybe, just maybe, he was meant to play a part in it. Jason Carter wiped his hands on a grease-stained rag and leaned back against the workbench. The garage was quiet except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. It was late, and most people in the small Montana town had already turned in for the night. But Jason wasn't tired. He never was when the stars were out. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, dark and sprinkled with pinpricks of light. Jason had always been drawn to it. His grandfather, an amateur astronomer, had taught him how to find constellations and track planets across the heavens. When he passed away, Jason inherited his old telescope, a clunky thing that still worked if you knew how to handle it. Tonight, Jason decided to set it up again. Maybe he'd spot something interesting. Anything to distract himself from the monotony of fixing cars all day. He adjusted the tripod on the patchy grass behind the garage and peered through the eyepiece. At first, everything looked normal. Distant stars, a faint blur where a galaxy might be. But then, as he focused on what seemed like an empty patch of sky, something strange happened. A flicker. Not a star blinking or a satellite passing by. It was different. Intentional. Jason frowned and adjusted the lens again. This time, the flicker came back, stronger. And then, faintly but unmistakably, he heard it. A voice. "Human, do not turn away." The words crackled, distorted, like they were being transmitted over a bad radio connection. Jason froze, his heart pounding. Was this some kind of prank? Static filled the silence before the voice returned. "You are needed. Do not back out now. You agreed to bond before the council." Agreed? Jason hadn't agreed to anything. He glanced around nervously, half expecting someone to jump out laughing. But the field was empty. Only the cool night air and the distant chirping of crickets kept him company. Still, the voice persisted, repeating fragments of the same message. Each word sent shivers down his spine. "What council?" Jason muttered aloud, leaning closer to the telescope. "What are you talking about?" There was no answer this time, just more static. Then, abruptly, the transmission cut off. Silence fell heavy and thick. Jason stared at the telescope, unsure whether to feel scared or excited. He reached for his phone and recorded a note, describing everything he'd heard. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. Someone, or something, was trying to reach him. Over the next few days, Jason couldn't stop thinking about the message. He replayed the recording dozens of times, analyzing every syllable. The voice sounded alien, yet there was something oddly human about it too. It made him uneasy, but also curious. Who were these beings? What did they mean by bond? And why him? One evening, while tinkering with an old truck engine, Jason noticed a figure standing outside the garage door. Startled, he looked up to see a woman watching him. She wore plain clothes, a jacket and jeans, but her presence felt unusual. Her dark eyes locked onto his, sharp and knowing. "Jason Carter," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her accent was soft, almost melodic. "I've been looking for you." Jason straightened, gripping the wrench in his hand like a weapon. "Who are you?" "My name is Elena Vega," she replied calmly. "And I think you've been receiving messages lately." "From the stars." Jason's stomach dropped. How could she know about that? Before he could respond, Elena continued. "You're part of something much bigger than yourself, Jason. Something ancient. You didn't ask for this, but it chose you. Now you have to decide. Are you ready to step into the unknown? She held out her hand, waiting. Jason hesitated, torn between disbelief and the thrill of possibility. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded and took her hand. Whatever this was, he wanted answers. Jason stared at the holograms, his mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. The Calliths were unlike anything he had imagined. Their forms were tall and slender, with translucent skin that seemed to glow faintly. They moved gracefully, almost as if floating, and their large almond-shaped eyes radiated intelligence. Despite their alien appearance, there was something calming about them, something that made Jason feel less afraid. "Are these real?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "As real as you or me," Elena replied, standing beside him. "These projections are based on actual encounters. The Calliths have been observing Earth for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reach out." Dr. Brooks stepped forward, holding a tablet in his hands. "The bond is more than just a connection, Jason. It's a bridge, a way for two species to share knowledge, emotions, and understanding. For the Calliths, it's sacred, and they believe you're ready." Jason shook his head, still overwhelmed. "I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. How does this bond work? What happens to me?" Elena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's not easy to explain, but here's what we know. During the bond, your consciousness will merge with one of the Calliths. You'll experience their thoughts, memories, and feelings, and they'll experience yours. It's a two-way exchange, but once it's done, there's no going back. You'll be forever linked to them." "That sounds intense," Jason said, rubbing his temples. "Why would anyone agree to something like that?" "Because it's important," Dr. Brooks answered. "The Calliths aren't just reaching out for fun. They're facing a crisis, and they believe humanity holds part of the solution. By bonding with you, they hope to gain insights into our biology, culture, and resilience. In return, we stand to learn from one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy." Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He didn't feel special. He wasn't a scientist, a leader, or even particularly brave. He was just a mechanic from a small town. Why had they chosen him? "Look," Elena said gently, sensing his hesitation. "You don't have to decide right now. Take some time to think about it. But remember this, the Calliths don't pick randomly. If they chose you, it's because they see something in you that others might miss, something valuable." Jason nodded slowly, though his doubts lingered. Over the next few hours, Dr. Brooks and Elena walked him through more details about the Calliths and their world. They showed him maps of their star system, recordings of previous communications, and simulations of what the bonding process might look like. Each piece of information brought new questions, but also a growing sense of curiosity. As the night wore on, Jason found himself drawn to a particular image, a glowing planet surrounded by rings of shimmering light. It was beautiful, almost dreamlike. According to Dr. Brooks, this was the Callith homeworld, a place where nature and technology existed in perfect harmony. The thought of visiting such a place filled him with both wonder and fear. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "If you say yes, we'll leave tomorrow. There's a ship waiting to take us to their world. But if you say no, we'll erase everything you've learned tonight, and you can go back to your life as if none of this ever happened." Jason looked at her, then at Dr. Brooks, and finally at the holograms of the Calliths. His heart raced, torn between the safety of familiarity and the thrill of the unknown. He thought about the message he'd received, the urgency in the voice telling him not to back out. Maybe this was his chance to do something meaningful, something bigger than himself. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice firm despite the knot in his stomach. "I'll go." Elena smiled, relief washing over her face. "Good choice, Jason. You won't regret it." Dr. Brooks nodded approvingly. "We'll prepare you as best we can, but remember, the Calliths value honesty above all else. Be yourself and trust the process. For the first time since hearing that strange transmission, Jason felt a flicker of hope. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. The next morning, Jason woke up to the sound of soft knocking on his door. It was Alina, holding a small bag filled with supplies. "It's time," she said simply, her expression calm but serious. Jason nodded and grabbed the few things he'd packed the night before. A change of clothes, his grandfather's old watch, and the notebook where he'd scribbled questions about the Caliph. They walked back to the underground facility in silence, the weight of what was about to happen hanging heavy between them. When they arrived, Dr. Brooks greeted them with a reassuring smile. "Ready?" he asked. Jason hesitated for just a moment before nodding again. He didn't feel ready. Not really, but he knew there was no turning back now. Alina led him to a large hangar deep within the complex. Inside stood a sleek spacecraft that looked like nothing Jason had ever seen. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if it were alive, and its design was smooth and organic, more like something grown than built. A ramp extended from the side, inviting them aboard. "This is the ship?" Jason asked, his voice tinged with awe. "It's called the Orion *." Alina replied. "It's fast, safe, and designed for long-distance travel. You're going to love it." Jason followed her inside, where another person waited, a man with short brown hair and a warm, easygoing demeanor. "This is Liam Harper," Alina introduced. "He'll be piloting us to the Caliph homeworld." "Nice to meet you, Jason," Liam said, shaking his hand. "Don't worry. We've done this route plenty of times. You're in good hands." As the ramp closed behind them, Jason took a seat near one of the windows. The interior of the ship was surprisingly cozy, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. Still, his nerves buzzed like live wires. What if something went wrong? What if he wasn't strong enough to handle the bond? Before he could spiral into doubt, the engines hummed to life. The sensation was strange, but not unpleasant, a gentle vibration that seemed to resonate through his whole body. Moments later, the ship lifted off, leaving Earth's surface behind. Through the window, Jason watched as the world shrank beneath them. Clouds gave way to the curve of the planet, then to the vast blackness of space. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction, brighter and more vivid than he'd ever imagined. For a moment, all his fears melted away, replaced by pure wonder. "You okay?" Alina asked, sitting beside him. "I think so," Jason replied, still staring out the window. "It's beautiful." "It gets better," Liam chimed in from the cockpit. "Wait till you see their homeworld." For the next several hours, Alina and Liam kept Jason occupied, explaining the basics of interstellar travel and answering his endless questions. They taught him how to use the communication devices on board and showed him maps of the Caliph star system. Despite his anxiety, Jason found himself relaxing a little. These people weren't just professionals. They genuinely cared about making sure he felt prepared. At one point, Alina shared a bit of her own story. "I used to be like you," she admitted. "Scared, unsure. I lost my family in a war years ago, and I thought I had nothing left to give. But working with the Caliphs gave me purpose, helping bridge the gap between our species. It's worth it, Jason. Trust me." Her words stuck with him. Maybe this journey wasn't just about the Caliphs or their crisis. Maybe it was also about finding a new path for himself. Finally, after what felt like forever, Liam announced their approach. "We're here," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. Outside the window, a glowing planet came into view, surrounded by shimmering rings of light. It was even more breathtaking than the images Jason had seen back at the facility. "Welcome to the Caliph homeworld," Alina said softly. Jason stared at the sight, his heart pounding. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same again. The Orion * descended gently toward the Caliph homeworld, its surface shimmering like liquid gold under the light of a distant sun. Jason pressed his face closer to the window, unable to tear his eyes away from the breathtaking view. The planet was unlike anything he'd ever imagined. Vast crystalline structures rose from the ground, reflecting colors that seemed to shift and dance with every passing moment. Rivers of glowing water wound through lush landscapes, and the air itself appeared to hum with energy. "This is incredible," Jason whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Elena said, standing beside him. Her voice carried a note of reverence, as if even she hadn't grown used to the sight despite her experience. Liam guided the ship to a landing platform near one of the larger crystalline towers. As they disembarked, Jason felt an odd sensation, a kind of warmth that seemed to radiate not just from the environment, but from within him. It wasn't uncomfortable, just different. Waiting for them were several caliphs, their tall, slender forms moving with an elegance that made Jason feel clumsy in comparison. Their translucent skin glowed faintly, and their large, almond-shaped eyes studied him with a mixture of curiosity and calm. Despite their alien appearance, there was something deeply human about the way they carried themselves, like they understood him on a level words couldn't capture. One of them stepped forward, taller than the rest, with markings etched into its skin that pulsed softly with light. Human, it said, its voice resonating directly in Jason's mind rather than through his ears. "You have come." Jason froze, unsure how to respond. He glanced at Elena, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Yes," he managed to say aloud. "I'm here." "I am Zirin," the Caliph continued, bowing slightly. "Leader of the council. Your presence honors us, Jason Carter." "Thank you," Jason replied hesitantly. He still wasn't sure what honor he was supposed to bring, but he figured politeness was a good start. Zirin gestured for them to follow, leading the group into the heart of the crystalline tower. Inside, the walls sparkled like diamonds, casting rainbows across the floor. The air smelled clean and fresh, with a faint metallic tang that reminded Jason of lightning storms back home. They entered a grand chamber where more caliphs waited, seated in a circular formation around a raised platform. At the center stood another figure, a caliph with brighter markings and an aura that seemed almost regal. Zirin introduced her as Velas, the ambassador chosen to bond with Jason. "This is a sacred moment," Zirin explained, addressing both Jason and the gathered caliphs. "Through the bond, we will share knowledge, hope, and understanding. Together, we may find solutions to challenges that threaten us all." Velas approached Jason, her movements fluid and deliberate. She stopped a few feet away and tilted her head, studying him intently. Jason felt exposed under her gaze, as though she could see straight through him to his doubts, fears, and dreams. "You are ready," Velas said softly, her voice echoing in his thoughts. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of certainty. Jason swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll do my best." Elena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just breathe, Jason. Trust the process." With that, the room grew quiet. The caliphs closed their eyes, and a soft hum filled the space. Jason felt the warmth intensify, spreading through his body until it reached his fingertips. Then, without warning, a surge of light enveloped him, pulling him into a state of consciousness he couldn't describe. In that instant, Jason experienced flashes of Velas's memories, centuries of exploration, discovery, and sorrow. He saw her people thriving, then faltering as a mysterious plague began to spread. At the same time, Velas glimpsed fragments of Jason's life. His childhood fascination with the stars, the loss of his grandfather, and his quiet longing for meaning. When the connection faded, Jason stumbled backward, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. Velas steadied him with a gentle touch, her expression unreadable yet somehow comforting. "The bond has begun," Zirin announced. "Now, the work truly starts." Jason took a shaky breath, realizing the weight of what he'd just agreed to. But as he looked at Velas, he felt a flicker of determination. Whatever came next, He wouldn't face it alone. Jason sat on a low bench in a quiet corner of the crystalline tower, his head resting in his hands. The bonding ceremony had left him physically and emotionally drained, but it wasn't just exhaustion weighing him down. It was the sheer magnitude of what he'd experienced. Velas's memories still lingered in his mind, vivid and raw. He could feel her pain, her hope, her determination to save her people. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting, like carrying a piece of someone else's soul inside him. Elena found him there a short while later. She knelt beside him, her voice soft. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know," Jason admitted, looking up at her. "It's like I can still feel her, everything she's been through. It's all here." He tapped his temple lightly. "Is that normal?" "It's part of the bond," Elena explained. "You're sharing more than just thoughts now. Emotions, experiences, they become yours too. Over time, it'll get easier to manage." "Easier?" Jason echoed, raising an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound easy at all." "No one said it would be," Elena replied with a small smile. "But you're stronger than you think, Jason. You've already taken the hardest step." Velas entered the room then, her glowing form moving silently across the floor. She paused near Jason, tilting her head as if trying to gauge his state. Though they hadn't spoken much since the ceremony, Jason could sense her concern. Her presence felt warm and steady, like a quiet reassurance. "You need rest," Velas said finally, her voice resonating softly in his mind. "Your body is adjusting. Pushing too hard will only delay recovery." Jason nodded reluctantly. "I guess you're right, but I want to help, if there's something I can do." "There is," Velas interrupted gently. "Rest is helping. Trust me." With that, she gestured toward a nearby chamber, a small circular room with walls that shimmered faintly, casting soothing patterns of light. Jason hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. As soon as he lay down on the smooth surface, a wave of calm washed over him, easing the tension in his muscles. Within minutes, he drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. When he woke hours later, he felt better, not completely restored, but closer to himself. Velas was waiting outside the chamber, accompanied by Zarin and another Caliph scientist named Kairos. Kairos held a device that pulsed with soft blue light, its purpose unclear to Jason. "We must begin analyzing the bond," Kairos explained, addressing both Jason and Velas. "The data we gather may hold answers to the plague affecting our people." Jason nodded, though unease crept into his chest. He didn't fully understand what was being asked of him, but he trusted Velas, and if this was how he could help, he was willing to try. Over the next few days, Jason worked closely with Velas and the Caliph scientists, undergoing tests designed to measure the depth and strength of the bond. Some involved focusing on shared memories, while others required Jason to describe emotions or sensations he felt when connected to Velas. At times, it was exhausting. Other times, it felt exhilarating, like solving a puzzle piece by piece. Through it all, Velas remained a constant presence. She guided him patiently, explaining concepts he struggled to grasp, and offering silent support when frustration threatened to overwhelm him. Slowly, Jason began to notice changes within himself. He was becoming more attuned to Velas's thoughts, almost instinctively knowing when she needed encouragement or space. One evening, as they reviewed the latest findings, Kairos turned to Jason with a look of cautious optimism. "The bond grows stronger each day," he said. "Your connection to Velas is unlike any we have seen before. It may hold the key to unlocking new solutions." Jason glanced at Velas, who met his gaze with a faint glow of pride. For the first time since arriving, he allowed himself to believe they might actually succeed. But even as hope blossomed, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that challenges lay ahead. The bond was powerful, yes, but it was also fragile. And not everyone, he suspected, would welcome the union between human and Caliph. As days turned into weeks, Jason and Valus worked tirelessly alongside the Caliph scientists to uncover clues about the mysterious plague ravaging their people. The bond between them deepened with each passing day, allowing Jason to access not only Valus's thoughts, but also fragments of the collective knowledge shared among the Caliphs. It was overwhelming at times, like trying to drink from a fire hose. But Jason pushed through, driven by a growing sense of purpose. One breakthrough came unexpectedly during a late-night session in the lab. Jason had been reviewing data on Earth's ancient diseases, information provided by Dr. Brooks back at the underground facility, when something caught his eye. A pattern in the genetic markers of an old virus bore a striking resemblance to the mutations causing the Caliph plague. "Wait," Jason said suddenly, leaning forward. "Look at this." Valus and Kiris turned their attention to the screen, studying the highlighted sequences. "This structure, it mirrors the instability in our biology," Kiris murmured, his voice tinged with awe. "How did you notice this?" "I don't know," Jason admitted. "It just clicked, like seeing a familiar shape in a puzzle." Valus placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "Your mind works differently from ours. Perhaps that is why you see connections we miss." Encouraged by the discovery, the team devised a plan to combine human medical techniques with Caliph technology. Using samples from both species, they began developing a hybrid treatment designed to stabilize the infected cells. Jason threw himself into the work, learning as he went and relying heavily on Valus to bridge gaps in understanding. Together, they became a seamless partnership, her precision and logic complementing his creativity and intuition. But progress wasn't without its challenges. The experiments were delicate, requiring exact timing and coordination. More than once, Jason made mistakes that set them back, leaving him frustrated and doubting his abilities. Each time, Valus reminded him to breathe, to trust the process. "Failure teaches as much as success," she told him one evening after a particularly grueling test failed. "We will try again." Slowly, the pieces started falling into place. The hybrid treatment showed promise in early trials, stabilizing infected cells without causing further damage. Hope spread throughout the Caliph community, and Jason felt a swell of pride knowing he played a part in it. For the first time, he truly understood the potential of the bond, not just as a tool for survival, but as a way to unite two vastly different species. Elena visited often during this time, bringing updates from Earth and checking on Jason's well-being. She marveled at how much he'd changed since their first meeting. "You seem lighter," she remarked one afternoon as they walked along a glowing river near the crystalline tower. "Like you found what you were looking for." "Maybe I have," Jason replied thoughtfully. "I didn't think I'd ever feel like I belonged anywhere. But here," he gestured toward the shimmering landscape around them, "I'm doing something that matters. That feels good." Despite the progress, not everyone welcomed the collaboration. Whispers of dissent began to circulate among the Caliphs. Some viewed the bond as unnatural, a violation of their purity. Traditionalists argued that relying on humans, even for survival, was a betrayal of their heritage. Jason overheard fragments of these conversations whenever he ventured outside the lab, and though he tried to ignore them, they weighed on him. One evening, as he and Valus reviewed the latest results, Zirin approached them with a troubled expression. "There is unrest," he said gravely. "A faction led by Elder Thrin opposes the bond. They believe your presence threatens our way of life." Jason frowned, worry creeping into his chest. "What does that mean for us? For the treatment?" "For now, nothing," Zirin assured him. "But be cautious. Their anger may turn dangerous." Valus squeezed Jason's hand, her silent way of offering support. Though uncertainty loomed, Jason refused to let fear derail their efforts. If anything, the resistance only strengthened his resolve. He hadn't come this far to give up now. The tension in the air grew thicker with each passing day. Jason could feel it in the way the Caliphs around him moved, more cautiously, more guarded. Even Valus, usually calm and composed, seemed on edge. The whispers of dissent had turned into open hostility among some factions, led by Elder Thrin, a towering figure with sharp features and an even sharper glare. His presence alone was enough to make Jason uneasy. One morning, as Jason and Velas prepared for another round of tests, Zarin arrived with urgent news. Thrin's followers are planning something, he warned. They see the bond as a threat to our purity. You must stay vigilant. Jason swallowed hard but nodded. What do they want? They believe severing the bond will restore balance, Zarin explained grimly. But doing so would undo everything you've worked for, and likely harm both you and Velas. Jason glanced at Velas, whose glowing form seemed dimmer than usual. She didn't speak, but her worry was clear. We can't let them stop us, Jason said firmly. There has to be a way to prove this is worth it. Before Zarin could respond, alarms blared throughout the crystalline tower. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Jason's heart raced as voices echoed outside, the unmistakable sound of chaos breaking out. Stay close, Velas urged, gripping his arm tightly. Together, they followed Zarin toward the source of the disturbance. In the central chamber, where the bonding ceremony had taken place, a group of Caliths stood facing off against the council members. Thrin stood at the forefront, his voice booming with anger. This human contaminates us, Thrin shouted, pointing directly at Jason. He brings weakness into our society. We cannot allow this abomination to continue. Jason stepped forward instinctively, though Elena appeared beside him and held him back. Don't engage, she whispered urgently. This isn't about logic, it's about fear. Velas moved to stand between Jason and Thrin, her posture unwavering despite the hostility radiating from the crowd. The bond is sacred, she declared, her voice resonating with quiet authority. It connects us, not just to humans, but to hope itself. Would you turn away from salvation because of pride? Thrin sneered, his eyes narrowing. Hope, salvation. You blind yourself to reality, Velas. This outsider poisons our future. The argument escalated quickly. Some of Thrin's followers began advancing, their movements aggressive. Jason felt a surge of panic, but forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to show weakness now. Suddenly, Liam burst into the chamber, holding a device that emitted a high-pitched hum. The noise disrupted the confrontation, giving Zarin and the council a chance to regain control. Enough, Zarin commanded, his voice cutting through the commotion. Violence solves nothing. If you oppose the bond, bring your grievances before the council, not through force. For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, Thrin turned sharply and led his followers away, though not before shooting one last venomous glare at Jason. The threat wasn't over, but the immediate danger had passed. As the crowd dispersed, Velas approached Jason, her expression softening. Are you all right? She asked. I think so, Jason replied, exhaling shakily. But I don't know how much longer we can keep going like this. They're not going to stop. Elena stepped closer, her tone resolute. Then we'll have to work faster. Prove them wrong before they can act again. Jason nodded, determination hardening within him. No matter what Thrin or anyone else believed, he knew the bond was worth fighting for, and he wasn't about to give up, not when so many lives depended on it. The attack came 2 days later, swift and brutal. Jason and Velas were in the lab, fine-tuning the hybrid treatment when a loud crash echoed through the crystalline tower. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and alarms blared once more. Before either of them could react, Elena burst into the room, her face pale but determined. They're here, she said urgently. Thrin's followers. They've sabotaged the power grid. We need to move now. Jason's heart pounded as he grabbed the data tablet containing their research. What about the samples? The treatment? We'll protect it, Velas assured him, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. She exchanged a quick glance with Elena, who nodded grimly. Together, they hurried toward an emergency exit, But halfway there, a group of hostile caliphs blocked their path. Their glowing forms pulsed with anger, and one of them stepped forward, holding a device that crackled with energy. Jason recognized it immediately. It was designed to disrupt the bond. "Hand over the human," the leader growled, his voice cold and sharp. "This ends today." Elena stepped in front of Jason protectively, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "You don't want to do this," she said calmly. "If you harm him, you destroy any chance of saving your people." The Caliph hesitated for a brief moment, but Thrin appeared behind them, his presence commanding and unyielding. "Enough talk," he barked. "Sever the bond, or watch our world crumble." Velis moved quickly, placing herself between Jason and the attackers. Her voice rang out, firm and clear. "You will not take him from me." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Thrin raised his hand, signaling his followers to advance. Just as they lunged forward, Liam Harper emerged from a side corridor, wielding a weapon that emitted a bright flash of light. The sudden burst disoriented the attackers, giving the group precious seconds to escape. "This way," Liam shouted, leading them down a narrow passage. They ran as fast as they could, dodging debris and shattered crystalline shards that rained down from above. Behind them, shouts echoed through the halls, growing louder with every step. Finally, they reached a secure chamber deep within the tower, a hidden refuge designed for emergencies. Once inside, Liam sealed the door, activating a shield that hummed softly as it locked into place. For the first time since the attack began, Jason allowed himself to breathe. "We can't stay here forever," Elena said, pacing anxiously. "They'll find us eventually." Jason looked at Velis, whose glow had dimmed significantly. He could feel her fatigue as if it were his own. "There has to be another way," he said quietly. "A way to stop this without losing everything." Velis met his gaze, her expression resolute. "There is one option," she admitted, "but it is dangerous for both of us." "What are you talking about?" Jason asked, dread creeping into his chest. "The bond can be amplified temporarily," Velis explained. "It would allow us to merge completely, accessing deeper layers of my species' collective consciousness. With that knowledge, we might uncover the final piece needed to perfect the cure." "But what happens to you?" "To me?" Jason pressed, his voice rising. "Will we survive it?" "I cannot say for certain," Velis replied honestly. "But I trust you, Jason. If anyone can endure this, it is you." Jason stared at her, torn between fear and determination. Failure wasn't an option, not when so many lives depended on them. Finally, he nodded. "Let's do it." With Liam and Elena standing guard, Jason and Velis prepared for the procedure. As the amplification began, waves of energy surged through them, merging their thoughts, memories, and emotions into a single unified force. Pain seared through Jason's body, but he gritted his teeth and focused on the task ahead. Through the haze, he saw flashes of ancient Caliph history, forgotten remedies, and biological insights hidden deep within their collective mind. Piece by piece, the solution to the plague came into focus. When the process ended, Jason collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, while Velis swayed unsteadily beside him. "It worked," she whispered, her voice weak but triumphant. "We have it." Exhausted but hopeful, Jason clung to the knowledge they'd gained. The fight wasn't over, but they had taken a crucial step toward victory, even if it had come at great cost. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Armed with the knowledge gained from amplifying the bond, Jason and Velis worked around the clock to finalize the hybrid treatment. Though both were physically and emotionally drained, they pushed through, driven by the urgency of their mission. With Liam and Elena providing support, they tested the cure on infected Caliph cells, watching anxiously as the results came in. "It's working," Kairos announced one evening, his voice trembling with relief. "The instability is reversing. The cells are stabilizing." A wave of hope swept through the team. For the first time since arriving, Jason allowed himself to believe they might actually succeed. But the victory was bittersweet. Velis's strength had diminished significantly after the amplified bond, and she struggled to maintain her usual composure. Still, she refused to rest until the treatment was ready for widespread use. When the cure was finally complete, Zarin called for an emergency meeting of the council. The chamber buzzed with tension as Thrin and his followers took their places, their expressions unreadable. Jason stood beside Velis, his heart pounding as Zarin addressed the assembly. "The human and Velis have succeeded where others could not," Zarin declared, his voice firm. "They have developed a cure for the plague threatening our people. This achievement proves the value of the bond, a connection that has brought us closer to salvation." Thrin rose to his feet, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You would sacrifice our purity for survival, our heritage for the sake of convenience." "No," Velis countered, stepping forward. Her voice resonated with quiet authority. "We preserve our future by embracing what makes us strong, not just our past, but our ability to adapt and grow. The bond is not a betrayal of who we are. It is an extension of it." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, slowly, murmurs of agreement spread among the council members. Even some of Thrin's followers began nodding reluctantly. Though not everyone was convinced, the tide had turned. The cure would be distributed, and the bond would remain intact. As the meeting concluded, Jason felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He turned to Velis, gratitude shining in his eyes. "We did it," he said softly. "Together." She smiled faintly, though her glow remained dim. "Yes, but there is still much to do." In the weeks that followed, the treatment began to heal the Caliph population. Hope returned to the planet, and the hostility toward Jason lessened. Thrin retreated into obscurity, his influence waning as the benefits of the cure became undeniable. Jason found himself welcomed more openly, his presence no longer seen as a threat, but as a symbol of unity. Eventually, Jason faced a choice: return to Earth or stay among the Caliphs. After much deliberation, he decided to remain. The bond had changed him in ways he couldn't undo, and he didn't want to. Here he had purpose. Here he belonged. Alina promised to visit often, ensuring Earth stayed informed about the alliance. On the day she left, she hugged Jason tightly. "You've come so far," she said. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks," Jason replied, smiling. "For everything." As the ship carrying Alina disappeared into the sky, Jason stood beside Velis, gazing at the shimmering horizon. The journey ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he was ready. Together, they had forged a bridge between two worlds, a bond that would shape the future of both species. And as the stars twinkled above, Jason felt a sense of peace he'd never known before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them, not alone, but with Velis by his side.